Hello everyone and welcome back to Uncommon Sense, the most uncommon place on the internet, the channel where we question everything and we learn together. I am your millennial outlaw host, Billy the Kid, broadcasting to you from Southern Oregon. And today I have a very special guest for you all. I had the opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with Rejeana Jackson. It was a good and honest conversation that I think the people of the basin need to hear, and I really hope that this is a stepping stone to maybe having more of these conversations with other public figures in Klamath Falls. So here it is, my conversation with Rejeana Jackson. Please feel free to leave your comments, any questions, concerns, or what have you down below. The only thing that I ask is, as always, please be respectful to myself and Mrs. Jackson, and let's all just have a good conversation.
So, like I was saying, prior to 2020, I think most of us were able to put into separate compartments politics from life, but the government took that option away from us in 2020 because they infected their politics into our schools, into our healthcare systems, into us running our business. So I think that's why we are where we are today, is because we have no choice. They have injected politics into every aspect of our lives.
Absolutely.
And I think it was by design. I was just actually got off the phone with one of my counterparts. So I'm currently the chair of the Klamath County Republicans, and there's the chair up in Hood River. And we were discussing all of this where, politics, because it's all volunteer, what we do through those organizations. And we've got to the point where it's even too much politics for us, which is hard to do because we really enjoy it. Where it just seems like everything is polarized, everything is divisive, and it really depends how you view that. So if you're a believer, which I am, you see you're writing on the wall, and you know that we are in end times, which can be very exciting for us believers. But at the same time, we need to understand we're living in an era where not everyone is a believer, so they're going to adjust differently to these changes.
Well, and then there's also the aspect that even in the realm of believers, there's different types of believers.
Sure.
And even those that believe similarly to you have different kind of viewpoints on how everything's panning out, or going to pan out, or should pan out, or whatever. Yeah,
it's very interesting how we can all kind of read the same book and have different interpretations of what that is. Are you, post-trib, pre-trib? But I think for right now, to say that there's not something spiritual involved, I think people must not be paying attention.
Yeah, I think it's a little naive to say it's not spiritual. Even people who aren't religious, I listen to all kinds of podcasts where they're not religious people.
Right.
But even then, there's no denying that there is something out of this realm that is going on here.
Right. Right, and then how do we either mitigate or how do we navigate? You have children, I have 3 small children. How do we navigate this? And I know especially in 2020, I went into mama bear mode big time. So,
I think a lot of people did.
Yeah, and went into mama bear mode, because, we stayed in our little bubble, and then all of a sudden they were closing our private Christian school. They closed our house of worship, but yet the alibi was still open.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that COVID doesn't go into a strip club, but it does go into living faith.
Yeah.
With seeing all of that, just went into protective mode. You're not going to inject my child with anything. You're not going to put a mask on my child. No, they are not going to learn via remote, So it was a lot of saying no. And then you also need to understand is that they're looking up to their mama. How are you reacting when you're bullied? And we were being bullied by the government.
Yep.
So it was more important for me to stand up. So I was kicked out of a lot of places.
Hence why I quit my job at Dollar Tree abruptly the way I did. Everyone thought I was ridiculous.
Yep.
I was going overboard. And I said, no, I know where this is going.
Yep.
And I know exactly what this is. I'm not going to have it. I wouldn't even wear a mask.
Yep. Same.
I did put up with it for a short period of time, griping about it the whole time. And then when it came to, they were going to make us wear masks. I worked freight. They were going to make us wear masks long before the customers were ever there.
Right.
Unloading the truck in our own departments, well away from each other.
Right. So I think the nonsensical nature of what happened in 2020, it really divided the population, and it wasn't along party lines. It was those who understand pattern recognition and common sense, and those who were overly educated. I have a lot of overly educated people in my family that didn't see. And again, we're dealing with, for a lot of us, for you, for me as well, it's like the emperor's new clothes. We're telling you the emperor's naked. Doesn't anyone see how nonsensical this is? And we were told repeatedly by the media, by those in charge, by those that are, banning us from stores. I can't tell you how many restaurants I was kicked out of because I didn't put a homemade cloth over my face, and I certainly wasn't going to do it to my children. And so I really saw the two groups factioned. It was the common sense group and then the educated group.
Yeah, because I know someone that, and she did this as a joke. She worked at Dollar Tree. She made a mask out of an old lace bra. There was literally nothing to it.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, I spoke to some healthcare professionals that worked in the emergency room, and they were actually not seeing cases of actual COVID. They were seeing bacterial lung infections from people breathing in and touching their mask, and staph infections on their face from putting that dirty rag on their face
every day.
Yeah, so
and the kids that, oh my gosh, there was kids that ended up with them practically glued to their face because, I heard about an autistic kid.
Yep.
Because he was afraid to take it off.
No. And so, and I think that, I'm glad you pointed that out, that is the bigger problem, is the fear that we instilled during a critical time in children's lives where they're discovering themselves, their personalities, their bodies, all of these things that they're growing. And then what you did is you instilled fear in a place where there should not be. There should be wonderment and excitement and curiosity and all of these things. And you instilled fearing of other people, fearing of their friends, fearing of invisible things. What a boogeyman story. He's not hiding in your closet. It's literally around you and all of the people. Shame on those parents. I do have empathy for ones that we have ones in our family that were quite scared of COVID. They bought into it, and I have sympathy for them. We have, family that lives over in Ashland that we didn't see for over a year because they were terrified. They were terrified. These were also people that were going to the grocery store and disinfecting their groceries before they put them inside. I was like,
yes, I know.
Meanwhile, at the Jackson household, business as usual. We had people over, we did, and we were totally fine. Totally fine.
And it was kind of weird when I went out in public. I was like, whoa. Yeah. I forgot that everyone was living in the Matrix.
I forgot everyone was still watching TV. And it's crazy. And so...
And I haven't watched TV for years.
Yeah,
okay,
we stopped
because
too.
I couldn't afford anything, okay? I live in broke county America.
Yep.
I didn't have cable. I didn't even have Netflix. I didn't have any of that stuff. I had YouTube.
Yeah.
And what did I use YouTube for? Listening to music and Joe Rogan while I worked.
Right.
That's literally what I used it for. So when all of this stuff hit and all of a sudden my phone was being overloaded with masks this and vaccines that and Trump this and Fauci that, I was like, what is going on?
Yep. Because if you just looked out the window and you're thinking, well, if I believe what CNN or MSNBC or whatever they are telling me, I should see dead bodies in the streets. Business as usual, folks. Business as usual. But you would during the course of the day come into contact. I remember distinctly, I was shopping in Fred Meyer. I had all three of my children with me in the cart, and we were shopping. Of course, we're not wearing masks because I don't subscribe to that lunacy. I had a gentleman come up to me with not one, but two masks and a face shield, like scuba gear, came up to me yelling at me.
Yeah.
A strange mother with her three children yelling at me that I was going to kill everybody. But the funny thing is I could barely hear him because he had not one but two masks and a sneeze guard on.
Yeah.
So, and then as he walked away after yelling at me, my children pointed out, what was that man? And I have to just tell him, that man's not well. Because that's never is a truer statement. That man's not well. And I don't mean COVID. I mean mentally.
Yes.
He's mentally unwell. Now, the irony is that, you have these people which in normal situations, they aren't the hero, but you give them the opportunity to be a hero by being, mask Nazis.
Virtuous.
Right. The unearned virtual signaling. So, but the irony is that these entities would never approach me when my husband was there. Yeah. So they are very comfortable picking on a single mother with her three children. But if my husband was there, they wouldn't do it. He wouldn't have the nerve.
I would go into Weimar and there was one lady that, I swear, she tracked me down every time. Like, she would see me come in and she would find me in the store.
Yeah.
And single me out. Yeah. I'm like, of all the other people that aren't wearing a mask in here, why did you come after me?
Right. Right.
I don't know. It was weird.
Yeah.
But I also think it had something to do with my American paraphernalia I wore a lot at the time.
Yeah.
And I found that interesting, too, because I would be the only one with American flag shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Or with an American flag or Trump on my hat.
Right.
And she would single me out.
Right.
Why?
It's, I think, again, it falls into, if you look at the classic parameters of mental illness, these people fall into that category. Oddly enough, they are some of the most overly educated people I've met in my life.
Mm-hmm.
During 2020, it really brought to light how education doesn't serve you in the real world. I'm talking people with PhDs, master's degrees,
yes.
talking absolute shite
mm-hmm.
about COVID. Yeah.
I mean, I could have handled things on my end differently for sure, but relationships were severed
mm-hmm.
due to the mask.
Oh, yeah.
And the ones that I got it from were those that had been college educated for years.
Yeah.
People that told me I should go back to college. Well, why don't you go back to school?
Right.
Why do I need to go back to school? I'm an artist, a writer, and a content creator.
Right.
What can they teach me?
Right. You're actually producing and creating things instead of just regurgitating whatever liberal school taught you. And,
mm-hmm.
and oftentimes, and I do feel for them, and these are probably the people...
I do too, absolutely.
I feel for them because, you have to, that's a lot of brainwashing to end up in that position. And, we were all sold a bill of goods. I remember growing up, you must go to a 4-year school. You must do this. You must do that. And now looking back on it, we're not wishing those things for our children. We want you to be a productive member of society, be God-fearing.
Mm-hmm.
We want you to be polite and contribute, hardworking, all of these things. Now, whether or not you become a doctor, I don't care. I'd actually prefer for you to be an electrician, a plumber, something that you can go to an apprenticeship and it segues into a position
mm-hmm.
immediately. I can't tell you how many overly educated people I know that are still living with their parents because they can't afford. And these are the people asking for debt forgiveness, the student loan forgiveness. It's just like... So
I know. And I paid off my student loans. And I quit college because about a year into art school, I realized I'm learning the same thing that I've been learning for the last 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm paying for school that's not going to teach me anything new until I've paid for it for another 2 years.
Right.
What is the point? I just wanted to learn how to graphic design.
Right.
Because I wanted to be a concept artist.
Oh, okay.
Like for Disney or Sony. Actually, I really wanted to work for Sony.
Okay.
Sony and Blizzard, the one that makes all those nerdy video games I love. But I wasn't learning any of that.
Right.
And I was like, I have a computer.
Right.
Well, I just get some programs and I'll
Yep. And
start
that's
learning
the
on
better
my
way
own.
of doing it. Because you have to think they're a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my husband and I were just talking about this because we both went to Pepperdine University, which is one of the most expensive private schools in the country. And
where is that?
And it's in Malibu.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Wow.
Right, I know. So went to these colleges, took out astronomical student loans that we'll be paying back for the rest of our lives. And for what? I'm a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
And for what? And so I will say this, I met my husband there, so for that I'm appreciative. Did I really learn a lot? I don't know. But I do know I could have gone to a JC for 2 years and transferred and
mm-hmm.
not incurred thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And for what? I don't know. But I know that our parents were sold a bill of goods pressuring us to do all these things, and especially for me, and especially being female, it was don't get married early, don't have children, you need to go to school, you need to be able to be resourceful, you need to be all of these things, which is true. But on the other hand, we have got to open the doors and be okay as a society for those that do want to get married young and have babies. Mm-hmm. Our population is rapidly declining.
It is.
Rapidly
Scarily
declining.
so.
Scary. And so we have to tell these kids, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Having a child young is not going to ruin your life. That's what was told to me. Oh, you're going to ruin your chances. You're never going to get an education. Having a child early is going to ruin your life. You don't want to.
What ruins it is not keeping the family together.
Right. Yeah.
The ones that have their kids young and they weren't even taught how a relationship is supposed to work. Mm-hmm. So they don't know how to keep that together even after whatever even possible mistakes that might have been made that resulted in the child.
No. A lot of this, I think, goes back to our foundation in the Lord.
Yeah.
And it really starts with, it's hard to blame the child for the mistakes of a parent. And honestly, it turns out that these things can be cyclical and go through generations, those generational curses, that until, a child or a generation stands up and says no more. For some that might be addiction, stopping the cycle of addiction, or abuse, or, divorce, or whatever that might be. It's at some point people have to stand up and say, enough, I want better for my children.
Yeah.
And even, Peter and my husband and I have done that in some things that we see these generational curses come from, each side of our family. And we're saying, stop, we're not doing that anymore. It changes here. Going forward, it changes here. And this will not be part of our children's story. And so we have to make a conscious effort. I think, for such a time as this is why we are alive, and we're alive during these COVID, pandemic. I think it's God only chooses the strongest people to endure these things, and we've lost some people, to suicide, that just couldn't take it. And I miss my father very much, but I'm glad he was not alive to see this. Especially you see these veterans and what they went through, and what their country and what they fought and their loved ones had died for what? So the government can be used to be, mutilating children and paying back student loans and reparations, and I don't know what else. It's just we've totally lost sight of what a government is for and who the government works for. We have lost sight of that. So
absolutely.
That's why I wanted to get involved in local politics. Will it pan out? I don't know, but I'm certainly not going anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if I can say this, I'm rooting for you, to be honest.
Thank you.
Of I've sat and listened to all the boring hours or too many boring hours, I should say, of these guys talking. And to be honest, I'm not typically one that votes for a woman. That's,
I get it.
Sorry, but,
You've gotten to know women.
Women are emotional.
Yes.
Women are crazy.
I get it.
Yeah. But I think there's something to be had with a businesswoman.
Right.
And your approach, I think, has a lot to stand on with, looking at it as, in a sense, a business. Yeah. I don't think it's a bad analogy. Some people might think, oh, that's, I don't know, weird or whatever, but I think it's a pretty good analogy.
Right.
Because you do have different departments of things, whether it's your police department or your sanitation department, your water department, and you have all these people working in said departments just like you would in Fred Meyer's or whatever.
Exactly. And that's and the reason I use that analogy is so many people can relate to it. Not many people have worked for the government. A lot of people have worked for corporations and small businesses. And so that they understand this is an ants versus grasshoppers thing. We are the ants and we have to stand up to the grasshoppers. We need to put it back in perspective who runs this government and what they should be doing. And that's why I'm running. And I think, some of my opponents, I think they're strong candidates. I think they have good ideas, but I don't want this position to catch them by surprise. This is an HR position.
And that is what I worry about with a lot of them.
Yes,
I think they're all good people.
Right.
I do. And even for the ones running for the other position, I think they're good people. But, except for maybe DeGroot, I don't know about him. That is something I want to kind of bring up because I did have some things mentioned to me about that. But I feel like we're all people, first of all.
Right.
So I don't even with DeGroot or Hensley, like they're people.
Right.
And they have their vision or, what they think is important, but they're so narrow-minded. And I don't think they mean to be that way.
Right.
But they have this certain thing that they're focused on that they understand, and that's the only place that they can look at it from.
Right.
Whereas I think as, from that managerial sort of position, you have the experience to look at all of them separately.
Sure.
In a different way.
Yeah.
Like the kid that was talking about the water and stuff. I think he's great. I think his ideas, I think we need them.
Right.
But I don't think this is the position for him.
I would agree.
And you've mentioned this to me before, and from what I've gathered in other areas, as a commissioner, there's not a lot he can do about the water situation.
It's a state and federal issue. Now, I do think in some cases,
Now, if we could get it to a county issue, get it back to where...
Well, you can advocate, and that's why I was saying, being the only one that's endorsed by all three state legislators, that's not because yes, we're friendly, but I have working relationships. I've worked with our state legislators on measures, on local candidates, on fundraising, on, I've connected, and you can only do that, so if you're going to take an issue like the water issues and you feel like our local representatives aren't doing what they need to do, then you can call on these larger entities to help you out. And I think having that not saying that others couldn't have that working relationship, but for me it's already established. But you are correct. There's not much you can do from the commissioner seat, but you can be an advocate.
Yeah.
And I think that's the trouble with folks running on single issues. That's putting a lot of eggs in one basket, and I think it's a little disingenuous to kind of pull in votes because of that, because you really can't do much. And so I think oftentimes, I won't say pandering, but I'll say pandering, if you're in certain groups, you have to be honest with them. Here's my limitations. I'm not going to overpromise and undercommit. You have to be honest with people and give them the advantage of they understand. People aren't stupid. They're not. They will be able to take the truth if you give them the opportunity. But it's the putting on rose-colored glasses, not being upfront, not being transparent, trying to change the narrative, all of those things that put the citizens, which are the shareholders in this business, to a disadvantage.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were saying something about DeGroot? Someone said something about DeGroot?
Oh, yeah. So people have asked me in a couple of different ways regarding all of these ones running for position 1. That's
position 1.
Position 1. And why didn't some of them run for position 3?
One of them did, and he changed.
Really?
Why
do you think that it is?
He was talked into it.
By?
Who do you think?
I have an idea.
Who would be most threatened by this person running for position 3?
That's very interesting.
It would be the incumbent, wouldn't it? Yeah. So he was talked into switching.
That is very interesting.
Yes.
Because many people...
I think he would have beat him.
Several people have asked me, what if more of them had run against DeGroot?
Yeah. I think it just would have taken one. And he switched, and that's fine. That's his right to do. But I gave him that feedback, and I said, I think you could have beat him.
I think you could have too.
And I would have helped. But here we are, and I think DeGroot was, it was a good political move for him to do that, because Andy Nichols would have beaten him hands down. Hands down. And I told him that. So, but, here we are, and so we'll see who gets over the primary. I think right now the biggest contenders are myself, Nichols, and Moss Driscoll. I think, but who knows? It's so hard. There's no polling. It's difficult to say. In some groups, I'm very popular. Some groups, they have no idea who the hell I am. So it's really hard to tell. But, I will say for Andy, coming from 20 years as being a Marine and 6 years with the Sheriff's Office, he's definitely a force to be reckoned with. I think the one disadvantage there is a lifetime working for the government, and everything. But he is perfectly capable. And if he ends up being commissioner, it's not the worst thing.
Yeah.
It definitely, there's Klamath would do okay.
It could be Hensley.
Right. So that's what happened with that. Some people tried to get me to switch at the last minute. I already had my signs printed, and I said, no, I'm going to stick with this. And so I had no idea when I filed that 8 other people would file as well. So 7 other people, because Dan Gerard, and then I filed, and then it was like a domino effect after that. But I think it's good, because take a look at, all these people that haven't previously been elected are now running for something. So now you have all of their circle of family and friends that are paying attention. This is how we create change in the county.
Yeah.
So whether or not I make it to the next step doesn't matter. What matters now is that you have the attention of a lot more people. So the problem with Klamath County is that we've gotten lazy with our conservative status. True. And it's slowly starting to change. Do you know the number 1 party in this county is not Republicans? It's non-affiliated. then Republicans, and then Democrats are increasing. If we don't pay attention to the local politics and make sure our doorstep is clean before we try to go fix something in Salem, we will lose this county. Because the other side infiltrates from the bottom.
Yeah.
They start on all these little boards, and they start infecting.
Yes.
And that's what they've done in small towns all across the country.
I've watched it happen, even here.
Yeah. It's cancerous. Yeah.
Yes. It's like a pimple just festering and waiting to pop.
So, you know, I think in hindsight, my run for commissioner was not planned. It was once I saw that our incumbent pulled out and that I didn't have an answer for that. It just wasn't even on my radar. I usually have some people lined up to run for these positions. And so I just looked at who had filed, and Dan is a lovely man. I've talked to him several times. I think that he has a lot of love in his heart for this county. He just hasn't been here long enough. Living here for
Gerard.
Dan Gerard.
I think he's a really nice guy.
He's a
and
really
I
nice
like
guy.
everything he says.
I do too.
And it's no offense to him.
It's not.
But
Just
he's
wait a couple
from
years.
Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And yeah, he hasn't been here for very long. But again, overall, I think his heart's in the right place.
I think
too. He has, you know, the mindset that most people kind of have around here.
And he's always been very kind to me, and you know, I really like him. I think give him a couple of years, and
I love the accent. I want to put him in a movie.
That was great. That was a great accent. No, I really like that. So, you know, I think there's some great candidates out there. You know, if Moss ends up getting it again, I don't think it's the worst thing. I think he's perfectly capable of understanding the job. I just have, you know, 20 years worth of HR and management experience. I think the transition would be easier for me. I think even though Andrew has had leadership roles, it hasn't been in the private sector. So we can't just say drop and give me 20. You have to negotiate. You have to have a high level of patience for people who might be argumentative.
Yeah.
And you have to have a high level of patience, and you can't just bark orders at them.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think he would be capable, you know, after some time to take on that role. But
I know that there are a lot of nonpartisan people here, and in a lot of ways, I'll admit that I am one too. I've basically been raised Republican, I guess, if that can be a thing. My father's always voted Republican.
Right.
I was also taught to question my government.
Yes, we all should be.
Yeah, my dad voted for Bush, but he wasn't like bowing to Bush.
Right.
He wasn't a Bush fan. And unfortunately, I see a lot of people nowadays that are fanatic about Trump. It drives me insane.
Thank you. So it is the tribalist mentality of some in the party that it's vote our down ticket. Okay, I've done that in the past. Some of the people I voted with an R by their name have not done what they said they were going to do. In fact, they've done the opposite.
Yeah.
You know, we have two congressmen right now. We have Lori Chavez Dreamer, and then we have Cliff Bentz, whose voting record is absolutely atrocious, and they should be ashamed. So, you know, those are two classic examples of, you know, Republicans that I've, you know, that people voted for that are not. I'm Republican in the sense where I'm pro-life. I am pro-Second Amendment. I'm pro-legal immigration. I am pro-capitalism. You know, so, but the party is changing, and it's getting further and further away from what it was at its inception. So at what point are we no longer Republicans? And at what point, and if you can ask any old school Democrat, they feel the same way. That's not the party they grew up with.
Yeah.
We used to be so similar. My parents, who were Republican, had Democratic friends, and we would differ on issues like social issues, unions, things like that.
Yeah.
Everyone loved this country. Everyone loved babies. Everyone, you know, hunted and fished and was patriotic and all of these things. But that has become...
loved baseball.
Yes. And so now you're in a position where, you know, you have these poor old, you know, blue-collar Democrats that don't recognize their party. We're getting that as Republicans. We're almost to the point where we don't recognize our party. Who are these people? You know, so what happens?
Well, when we look at the popular faces of the Republican Party, your Ben Shapiro's and your Michael Knowles's and stuff like that. And I really liked Daily Wire when they first started. I was very much, you know, into what they were doing.
Yeah.
I was always kind of up and down with Ben, I guess, a little bit, because
I can't listen to him. He sounds like the Micro Machine Man. It was like, I can't.
I actually we would listen to him just kind of to laugh at how he talked.
Oh, yeah, he sounds like the Micro Machine guy.
But these are the people that are becoming the new news faces of the Republican Party.
Always got to be wary of what's popular.
Yes.
I
always am.
Always wary of who's lifting these people up and why are they popular.
Yeah.
Are they organically popular? No. So you have to be careful.
Where did Ben Shapiro come from?
Yeah.
And then now we have all this, whatever going on Twitter with the arguing and the whatever. And I feel like it's more proof that in the higher realm of politics, right, left, it's the same bird.
Yep.
2 different wings.
Broken wings.
Now, the issue is when we come all the way down to local,
right,
if we aren't signed up as Republican or Democrat, then we lose certain things, even locally, that are important.
Sure.
So, like you were saying, we used to all just be Americans.
Right.
There wasn't so much of this really dividing line.
Division.
Yes.
It's manufactured.
And they've been slowly manufacturing it over time, like we look at the civil rights movement and all of that, and, all the way back to the beginnings of Planned Parenthood and whatever. But we can't fix what happened in the past. We can only learn from that in order to readjust our critical thinking skills in the future.
And so I'm 44 years old, and as I look at this and I get slightly depressed in my, is there hope? Well, I argue, yes, there is. And here's why. I've been to 2, I don't know if you know this group, Turning Point. USA?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I wanted to go to one of their events. I wanted the experience,
Okay, and that's what I'm talking about. So I've been to 2 of their events. You would not believe the tens of thousands of young people.
Pothole! We need to go take a selfie with that after this.
I know. Did you like that?
That was so great.
I'm like, I am going to take a picture. It was like infrastructure.
Right.
I was like, I've seen people almost keel over into that hole. It's outside of TJ Maxx. So I'm telling you, Turning Point, one in particular, I went to the event in Phoenix. It was called America Fest. There was 13,000 young conservatives, confident, bold, educated without being indoctrinated, passionate about the Lord, passionate about politics, passionate about conservative ideals. They have a whole turning point faith. They have Turning Point action. They are well funded. They're a well-oiled machine. It is like nothing I've seen before. Nothing. And I have to say, if I was young and in my 20s, I'd want to be there too. The cutest looking people I've ever seen in my life, all well dressed and have their act together. I was like,
different when you
even if I wasn't conservative, I'd still be here.
Right?
Like, this is where the party's at. Yeah. And so that brings me hope. Now think about these young people. They were... so you and I were impacted by 2020, but those folks between junior high and high school that were just trying to live their lives, do their sports, get their scholarships, apply for school, go to prom, graduate, all of that was robbed from them.
Yeah.
You don't think they're going to take action. They're mad. They're mad. Now, the
all
younger
those generational things that their parents got to do, especially if they had older brothers and sisters, they got to do that. Them. They were robbed of their, like, the boys that wanted to play varsity football.
Yes.
They couldn't do that.
Yes.
They didn't get to graduate with their class and walk down that infamous aisle, receive their diploma by hand, throw their hats together.
Yeah.
It's the whole experience.
Yeah. They will never forget what was taken from them. And I think they are... I think a side effect of what the government did has turned out a younger generation of conservatives, but they just don't know it yet. Yeah, so I don't know how we'll see May 22nd who gets past the primary. It'll definitely be 2 for the sheriffs, 2 for position 1. Position 3, I'm sorry, Sally Ann had a pretty big goof here about a week or so ago. I think she might be done. I unfortunately think it's going to be DeGroot.
Yeah.
She, I don't know if you followed that. Something came out about her not attending the chamber forum.
No, I didn't hear anything about that.
Yeah, so she didn't do the chamber forum, so I think that's going to come back to bite her. And then Todd Gesley doesn't have a chance. So I think some of us in hindsight probably would have run for position 3. You know, I think if Andy would have run, he would have beat him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could definitely.
Strong candidate. Wherever Andrew Nichols lands, the county will be blessed. He is a very capable man. Yeah.
So, one question everybody keeps asking me, so it's kind of personal in a way. Everyone keeps asking me, is she connected to the tribe and those Jacksons?
Oh, no, I married a big white guy named Jackson. So he is actually half Danish. So no, I am not now I am half Mexican. And with that comes, you know, we're you know, not Spanish, we're Mexican. Mm-hmm. So obviously that's native to the South.
Yeah.
But no, last name Jackson is from my husband.
Okay.
Big old white guy.
I've had a lot of people ask that because it's a very native name around here.
And I could be native. I look a little something.
Because,
you look a little something.
Yeah. And my cousin went to school in this area. I went to school in this area, and we both went to school with some Jacksons.
Yep.
But you don't look like them.
No.
So.
No, yeah.
I was like, I don't think so. But everybody kept asking me, so I was like, okay, if I get a chance, I will ask her.
Nope, half Mexican and half I don't know. So my daddy was adopted. Oh. And I've actually spent the last 2 to 3 years trying to find out who my family is.
Oh, wow. We interrupt this program for a short reminder. We'll be right back after this message. Everyone needs a mom and a pop to guide them through life. Every community needs mom and pop shops in order to flourish. Moms and pops are more likely to buy and serve local goods. Supporting moms and pops supports local and regional farmers and ranchers. Stop funding big corporations and franchises. Keep your money in your own community. Shopping local gives back to your hardworking neighbors and yourself. Shop local. Save farmers. Keep your community strong. This message is brought to you by the UnCommon Free Thinkers of America, not associated, affiliated, or connected to any Big Brother corporation, association, or their government overlords. And now, back to the program. A lot of times I make them read out loud. Mm-hmm. And then we talk about what we read.
Yeah.
And we question it a lot of times.
Yes.
Because, frankly, we were reading something one day. I was trying to do some research on this whole Israel versus Palestine versus whatever. But I brought out these books. So we're looking through all this stuff, and we're finding that, they're so vague with the way that they describe how things happened. You almost have to piece together, web the web yourself to figure out what happened, what really happened.
Right.
Because it'll tell you a little bit about what was going on in Palestine, but it doesn't give you a lot of details as far as any of the, it brought up Jewish underground Jewish organizations, but it didn't give me any names of any of them.
Right.
But then I was looking at something else. Zionists, actually. And it named something about one of their kind of underground organizations. And I was like, okay, so was that one of the ones that was connected to this? Yeah. But you almost have to, you know what I mean? You have to get out your little pins and your string and your...
That's by design, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
I think that, anyone looking at it, and let's just, be honest, the Israel of today is not the Israel of the Bible.
Absolutely not.
And so, gather from that what you will, but I think that begs to be explored. Interestingly enough, I, was sitting in church on Sunday, and I have to be honest, I was kind of in and out of the sermon. So what I like to do is I have a study Bible, and I go to the very back, and I look at those old school maps. The old school, those historical maps, and I just looked at that section. But I was looking at those historical maps, and if you see the conflict to that area, the conflict to the area is nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. No. And you can see those areas moving, and the conquering by this, and then this receding of that, and the conquering of this. So, to think that this is something new is naive. Yeah. This has been going on
for
thousands of years. I do, again, I look to what's happening in our universities and all of these protests that are happening, and I do have empathy for these children, but it really comes back to if I were a parent and I had sent my kid to, let's say, Cal Poly or something like that in San Luis Obispo, and I saw my child protesting, I would be down there in a heartbeat,
Well,
getting
and
my
there's a lot of
tuition
them-
back and taking my child
And
home.
there's some of them that are getting paid to go and do
Oh,
these,
absolutely. The
you
same
know?
thing with happened 4
And
years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's the same
They're
people.
broke college kids. Here, I'll give you a couple grand to go do this protest.
Yeah.
They don't even know what they're doing.
Right. And again, nothing of it is organic. If you look across all these schools, much like in the summer of 2020, all these people had the same shirts, the same this, the same that. It's organized.
It's all it's
a bunch of
it's a facade, really.
useful
a lot of
idiots,
ways,
and I mean that in a loving way,
Mm-hmm.
useful idiots that don't know what's going on. If you go up to any of these protesters and be like, okay, explain to me your stance on, Palestine and Israel in relation to this, they have no idea what they're doing there. They saw some flyer in a dorm room to meet up whenever, free food, and there you have it.
And all their friends are going to be there.
And the problem is that the left never learns about this. So when I was a child, do you remember Rock the Vote?
Yeah.
Clinton, they were trying to get the young people all jazzed about, rock the vote, rock the vote. But the problem with
Yes,
that...
I vaguely remember that. I was
Remember
really
that?
little when that happened.
Yeah. Yeah, and so they've tried
was
to
so
use this
dumb.
all the time to reignite the youth, but the problem is it doesn't translate. The voters are older. So
Yeah.
these kids, they'll go to the party, but doesn't mean they'll show up to the polls.
Yeah.
And that never works. Hillary Clinton didn't learn that. She threw all of these celebrity parties when she was running in 2015, all of this stuff, and instead of going, who actually votes? Or people like you and I.
Yeah.
It's not teenagers. And
Yeah.
so...
There's very few teenagers that vote.
There's very few, and so I think that taking a realistic look at what's happening in our world, and then just understanding wherever, because right now I'm not living for myself, I'm living for my children.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so every decision I make has to be quite calculated in that, because I want them to see a mother who is present but also leads in her community with strength. And so we have to take hard stances on these things, and especially in a world of safe spaces, and you're not doing your children any favors by shielding them from all of this. There is a way to guide them through this turmoil so they're stronger on the other side. So when we, at 18 years old, they're on their way, they can hit the ground running because they know you can question respectfully, you can question authority, you can question your government, you can stand up to bullies, all of these things. And you can do that with confidence because you have a firm foundation in the Lord. All of these other people and entities that don't have a firm foundation in the Lord, you have a hole in your heart that you're trying to fill with money, fame, titles, drugs, whatever it is. And you will never fill that hole, because if you look at the liberal side right now, they've had everything they've wanted for the past 3-4 years. You got the president, you got the Senate, you got the House, obviously that has changed. You have everything you want and you're still miserable. Meanwhile, those of us that, lost out in 2020, that's okay. We moved on with our lives. We're able to move forward because we have a firm foundation in the Lord. We stay close with our family and friends. We stay true to who we are, and we work hard. We work hard. And so, I think that hopefully the next generation will see how their parents stood the test of time through these trials and can maybe take the baton and lead us into the future. Because I'm tired. I don't want to be doing this for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
So that's how I kind of feel on the whole thing. Yeah.
So some of the other questions that I got that people asked were, to me, really basic, and I think anyone that listens to you, for whether it's in this interview or in another one, they can kind of pretty well judge how you feel about the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and the First and Second Amendment.
Right.
But I have had people ask me, like, what hurdles you think you might have to overcome. I was thinking maybe, give me, your top 3.
Yeah, I would say in this role for commissioner, I think the biggest hurdle to passing the primary and getting through the general election is going to be my ties to the Republican Party, because people have been sold a bill of goods that this position is nonpartisan. And it is nonpartisan in title only.
Yeah.
You will be hard-pressed, and I say impossible, to find any person on this planet that is nonpartisan. It's not possible. So then what you do is you create liars. And that's what people have lied. Like, people currently running for the commissioner position have lied and changed their party affiliation to nonpartisan to to pander and to fit a mold, but they are not. So I've always led with honesty. I think it's a better way to lead your life. You don't have to remember all your lies. You don't have to, spin anything or be apologetic. So I'm unapologetically Republican, and I would even trump that with I'm unapologetically conservative, whatever that means. Fiscally conservative, familial conservative, religiously, and everything that goes with that. So I understand that I appeal to a cross-section of the population that agree with me, but there's also a population that doesn't. So I think that's going to be not necessarily I will have take any issue working with any member of the public. It will be their perception through the media and other things, perception of what a Republican is. So there's going to have to be a mutual agreement to let some of these stigmas and stereotypes go. I am a mother. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I love my Lord. I'm a friend. I'm empathetic. I'm kind. All of these things. And to be labeled as a alt-right or MAGA, Voltron, Ultra.
Oh, I've seen that so many times.
Good Lord. I don't know what they're talking about, but I do know this, is that I have personal ethics, morals, and convictions that I will not compromise. And that includes if somebody's a Republican. I didn't vote for Newt Bueller because he's pro-choice. I won't do it because at the end of the day, I have to stand before my Lord and Savior and give an account for my life, and I will not have a blemish of voting for somebody that's pro-choice. I won't do it. But that's the hill I die on. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Other people have theirs, and that's fine. So, I disagree with any tribalist behavior coming from the party. I think there are, I've said before, it's, if Trump picked like a Tulsi Gabbard for VP, I think that could be helpful. I don't fully agree with her. Yes, she's pro-choice and all the things, but I understand it. And I think in order to start reaching across the aisle, we have to be empathetic and understanding. Not that I'm going to agree with you, but I get it.
Yeah.
I get where you're coming from. And until people have physical, personal interactions with me, they don't understand that because they see that I am loud, I am outspoken, and I'm with the Republican Party. All of these, boxes that are being checked off, well, she must be X, Y, and Z. And that is incorrect. Yeah. I love this community as much as you love this community. And I know that we can work together no matter what your political background.
So interesting, because I'm reading a book my aunt borrowed from somebody, and it's about this family of missionaries that went over to India, and they kind of settle in the Hidden Valley with the Sioux tribe.
Oh, okay.
And in one little section I was reading the other day, he was talking about how on a political level of things, there's always some politics that happen, even in a small village. And we're talking like 50 people or so.
Right.
Maybe a little bit more. And they don't believe in voting and the whole, democratic way of doing things. They discuss things, and they discuss things, and they discuss things. And they'll talk about those things for 6 months if they have to.
Right.
Until everyone comes to an agreement. And although I don't think we could make it work here, I think that's an interesting point to be had.
Sure.
That no matter whether you completely disagree or you slightly disagree, let's talk about it.
And interestingly enough about that example, it kind of reminds me of, and this is what the left always says, well, socialism works in these Scandinavian countries. And yes, it does. But you have a smaller population, a smaller geographical area, and you've got everyone to buy into this idea. Okay, I'm going to give you
We're talking 50%. Countries that are like the same size as our county.
As Oregon, right. It's just, you're able, it's much more, you can control the controllables. And so when they cite that as an example, I say, again, my husband's half Danish, and in Denmark, they have been socialists the longest. Hundreds and hundreds of years they've been, and it's worked for them because everyone's bought into the idea. Sure, I'll give you half my money, and you do, the laundry list of services that need to be provided. Okay, that's fine. So I think in those smaller communities, a democratic socialism or whatever it is, it does work. It does work. And here's the thing. I get where socialists are coming from. I think it's that kind of, they say bleeding heart, which can be, a little demoralizing. But it is. And that famous Winston Churchill, if you're not a liberal in your 20s, you have no heart. If you're not a conservative in your 40s, you have no brain. And I think that rings.
I love that.
I think that rings true.
I saw a picture of him the other day. It was what's his name? Stalin? and Roosevelt and Churchill. And Stalin and Roosevelt, they looked, their stature, the way they were sitting, they looked proud and victorious in whatever it was they had accomplished. A little pompous, maybe, you know? And Churchill was just like slumped. He didn't even have his hat on. He looked defeated.
Yeah.
I was like, what happened? And then they killed him.
Yeah.
How does that always happen?
I don't know. I don't know.
It happens every time.
Well, and even in the cases of these great leaders of our time, like a Winston Churchill and things like that, he had his own demons. He was a wildly famous philanderer and drunkard, and was horrible, misogynistic to women, things like that. But then you hear, and this is kind of interesting, it's like you hear of other leaders that were quite demonic in there, you know, so if you're looking at like a Hitler or something, everyone says, oh, he was a really nice guy. I don't know.
Yeah, he was just like, such a nice guy.
They say the same thing about serial killers. I don't know, he was my neighbor. He's a really nice guy.
Yeah,
he's got a freezer full
so
of,
friendly, and little did we know he'd been killing all the dogs in the neighborhood since he was 10.
Exactly. So I think that will be a challenge, not necessarily for me, but I understand that's a challenge for other people to get past that hurdle of my conservative background. Okay, I was like, who are they yelling at? Did your kids go home?
No,
okay.
That's... Lily's going to rescue a child.
Uh-oh.
I think he got away from Grandpa.
Uh-oh. They okay? Okay, yeah, he's there. Jeez.
Anyway.
So I think that'll be the biggest obstacle. I don't see, I'm a quick learner. I can't imagine that there's anything that is on that commission that I can't learn like this. You know, I think a challenge for me personally is the idea of working for the government in some ways makes me physically ill.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? It's just, you know, kind of being in the belly of the beast. It'd be like me moving to San Francisco, just the idea. But I will say I have a certain skill set that I think could be very lucrative to the county. And I would get in there, and I've said this repeatedly, I would just serve 4 years. I want to get in, do what I need to do, and get out. And then some of these other candidates with the big ideas, you know, the singular projects could come in. But until you fix the personnel piece of this, you're only going to have temporary change.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, and that's what I'm telling voters is I'm not going to turn into a Kelly Minty that's there for 12 years. It's not my, you know, if I can't do what I need to do in 4 years, fire me. Get rid of me. Useless. You know, these projects shouldn't take 8-12 years.
Yeah.
You know, so we should want more people like me in politics, and I'm not saying Republicans. We need more people who don't want to do it, that are doing it out of a sense of duty.
Yeah.
Not because they have a political science degree, not because they are an aspiring governor, none of these things. Lobbyists.
Just because they're a normal person who
is doing
looking at it from a logical
duty.
point of view, like, hey, this needs to be fixed.
Public service. Serve the public.
I don't want to be a politician.
Don't want to be a politician.
I just want to help fix this real quick.
Right.
And then I'm out. I'm going to go back to my life.
Exactly. And that's how it should be. That's how the founding fathers set us up.
I know. I was going to say, that's how it was at the beginning.
You know, you're a baker. I'm going to be a baker. Then I'm going to take off 4 years to be on city council or whatever it is. And then I'm going to go back to being a baker.
And a lot of them, they were bakers while they were the city councilmen.
That's true. That's true. You know, the fact that we have a president right now that has been in politics longer than I've been alive is a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
And is a multimillionaire doing so off of the backs of hardworking Americans.
Yeah.
Or corrupt lobbyists or whoever it is. This is a problem, people. Term limits, term limits, term limits. I think there should be a term limit for commissioner. It should be 2. Get out of there, go do something else. You can go to city council.
I could see at the max, like, 4 years.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. So each term is 4. I think 2 terms for each position would be fine. But you've got, and bless his heart, you've got a senator.
I do like the 2-year idea, though.
Yeah. You've got a senator, bless his heart, over in Josephine County, and he's been a senator forever.
Mm-hmm.
The man can barely stand up.
Yeah.
And so I think, and he's Republican, so I'm saying, along with the Mitch McConnells and everybody else, Lindsey Graham's, I think we all need to take a look at the longevity and stability of our candidates. And surely we have somebody else.
Yeah.
So even for those, I of course support Trump and I'm going to vote for him, but it's, we have to have some people waiting in the wings. Okay, when Trump's out, who then?
Mm-hmm.
Who is it going to be? Are we talking about a Vivek? Who are we talking about here?
You know, I actually kind of like Vivek, to be honest.
I had a chance to meet him, and he's funny.
Is he?
He's naturally funny. It was at the presidential debates in Milwaukee, and where he just was the young upstart, starting shit, and it was funny. And it's exciting to not have these prompter read speeches, and he was off the cuff, and it was joking around, and he has a couple of really great points. And if we don't listen to him, because he is a reflection of that generation.
He's my generation.
Yeah. He's a reflection. We're not listening to that generation.
Mm-hmm.
Because now, whether or not you like his style or whatever that might be, I think there's something to be acknowledged.
Absolutely.
In that. That he does. There's a reason he's popular. There's a reason that some of these podcasts with really my husband listens to a lot of them. These like Navy SEAL podcasts and things like that. They're very popular.
Where did they go?
I don't know.
Maybe that wasn't Lily. Because I didn't see Seth running out there either.
Did they go home?
I'm kind of wondering if they did.
I don't know. What time is it? I pick up my kids at some point. Oh, we're good. We're good. So.
Of course, they like to just sit sometimes. I kind of think.
But they know not to go off with a stranger, right?
No,
okay.
No.
Oh, okay. That's my only thing. Is
I'm waiting for a text back from my aunt.
Well, interesting. So, what are your ties to Bly Mountain?
Well, my family bought property out in Lanza Valley.
Okay.
Back when I was 9 or something like that. And then around the time I was 12 or 13, my dad bought property up on Bly Mountain.
Okay. I never get tired of that.
No, neither do I.
I never get tired of it.
I know that Mike's going to pick it up.
That's really high. No?
Oh, no. Yeah, it is.
That's really high.
Yeah, that is.
Jeez. And then he bought property up there?
Yeah. It's crazy how far that sound travels, too. Because he is way up there.
Well, and also because we're in a basin, too. It just bounces off, and yeah.
There's a feather. Anyway, okay, so, yeah, I just, I have family out there.
Okay.
We never really lived out there until, my cousin moved out there and stuff, but that was our playground, was Bonanza and Bly Mountain. That sounds weird to some people, but,
No.
I mean, on paper, I was raised in Klamath Falls, in the city, or on the county side of the line, right? I live in Altamont, which is weird to me. I'm like, when did this happen?
I know.
And I guess it's a census thing that happened like 2010-ish, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But anyways, I grew up in the basin. Like, my dad is a mountain man, and we were always out doing something. We even did the Mountain Man Rendezvous, and we would go out with our old tents and our old clothing and go out and party for the weekend.
Yeah.
You know, and we had like a cutlery store. It was kind of my dad's way of funding his weekend fun with his friends, you know? And then my brother was in Boy Scouts and stuff like that, and my dad was a Boy Scout master for a long time.
Oh, okay.
So I was the unofficial Boy Scout, and as long as there was, you know, a female parent or something like that going along, then I could go.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, my dad kind of calls me his unofficial Boy Scout because
Nice.
I tried joining Girl Scouts, and it just was not working out for me here.
Yeah.
And even the Girl Scouts that do more outdoorsy things, I don't know. I just have...
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I did Girl Scouts mostly as a way to get out of the house, you know. So I went to Camp Low Echo every year up until, high school. About till I discovered boys. And then that's what finally got me out of my Girl Scout,
right,
you know, stuff. But that was my life. But it was different. It was different. Girl Scouts today are not the Girl Scouts. We used to sell our own cookies.
Yeah.
I used to put those things in a radio flyer, and I would walk up and down and, you know, introduce myself, and because it used to build character. And honestly, that's where my business background started.
Was Girl Scouts, right?
Hustling those cookies.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so, you know, once I saw the independence and freedom that came with earning your own money, the sky's the limit. And so, you know, I'm hoping this summer to teach that to my kids and get them little jobs and see, now this is your money.
My dad, when he was doing his cutleries, my cousin taught me how to make Native American beadwork.
Oh, cool.
And so I made chokers and breastplates and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's cool. Are you guys Native?
My cousin is part Native.
Oh, okay.
He's his dad was Mexican and Apache, and then his mom is and Celtic like the rest of us.
Yeah.
My mom is Filipino. So that's where I get kind of that native look.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, Welsh plus Filipino looks like this.
Yeah.
My brother looks a little more Asian.
Oh, okay.
Than I do. But we often get asked if like we're Samoan.
Oh,
or,
interesting. You know,
I've been asked if I'm Maori. I was like,
oh,
whoa,
really?
that'd be so cool.
That'd be so cool. You could do a haka.
I'm not, but like, yeah.
I've just, especially when we lived in Los Angeles, because that's where we went to school. That was lower.
That was lower.
Those must be the F-35s. It's crazy how loud they are. So crazy.
My roommate's still home, so I'm texting her. I mean, I did tell them the aunties were around.
So anyhow, when we were living in Los Angeles, I got mistaken for Armenian and Persian and all that stuff. But yeah, it's really, really interesting, mixed kids and where that ends up. So our 3 kids, our oldest 2 have a little bit more like olive tone and, you know, kind of the darker features and everything. But then our little guy couldn't be whiter.
Oh, wow.
He is just, and he has blue eyes.
Oh, wow.
And like reddish brown hair. And he was my most difficult pregnancy. I was like, I put a lot of work in it. Right. It's like, that was my most difficult. He looks nothing like me.
Oh, wow.
I know.
That's so
I know.
weird.
It's so weird, but it's just, you get the, you know, the blending, you know. I'm half white, half Mexican, and then half Danish, and then his father's a quarter Italian. So you get all these, and it's just.
Well, and I'm surprised that my kids ended up as dark-eyed and dark-haired as they did, because their dad is actually mostly Irish.
Oh, really?
On their side. So,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing.
But
God's little miracles.
My family does have strong genes, and like my sister, I know because she's full Filipino. My two sisters have different fathers.
Okay.
But my dad adopted him when they moved to the States.
Okay.
So my oldest sister, her genetics come out so strong in her boys. Like, they all look like her. Yeah, they have hints of their dad.
Yeah.
I think the middle one of the first three, he definitely looks like his dad. But he has a lot of, like, the... you can see Jude in his eyes and his shaped face and stuff like that. Her first boy looks just like me.
Oh, really?
We have baby pictures where we can't tell me and Johnny apart.
That's so funny.
We look so much alike. Unless, I had like a bow in my hair or something like that. And then her youngest of the first three he's a spitting image of what she was when she was young. Like, he looks just like she did when she was little.
Aww.
And then even her fourth one, who has a different dad, he looks a lot like his dad, but her features are so strong, he's almost the spitting image of his mom.
Isn't it so crazy?
It is.
I know. It's so interesting. So I look exactly like my dad with my mom's coloring. Is that crazy? Yeah. Yeah, I look exactly like my dad. My mom is typical, like, she's got like kind of a moon-shaped face, and she's just got stronger. We call them kind of Mexican native. We call them we call them Nacos, but it's
right.
It's like the natives.
Well, it's like
the
I'm
natives.
an Asian beaner, so it's fine.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So it's like it's more of a indigenous features is what my mom has, and I look exactly like my dad, but got all of her color. It's just crazy.
See, and that's funny too, because my brother has more of those kind of indigenous type features that my mom has. So he has more of like the native eyes and things like that. And everybody says, "Oh, you look like your mom," and yet I don't think that I do hardly at all.
Yeah.
And people, but then people tell me and my brother we look like twins, and I'm like, what?
That's so funny.
I guess we do look a lot alike, but I think we both just look like our dad.
Yeah.
With some of the
little
hints of mom. Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny.
It's weird how genetics work like that.
It is.
So one last thing that I personally kind of wanted to ask you about is that organization that I unfortunately yelled at Palkovich about. I've been looking into it even more.
Is this the
Welcome
Corps?
So I was wondering if you knew anything about it, or...
I haven't had a chance to dig into the organization as a whole. It has all of the red flags. I believe that some of these organizations that probably in their inception meant well, but I would argue that bringing in refugees into our community while our own people are struggling to clothe, feed, and house their own children and families, I think is very tone deaf to what's happening in the community, and I certainly wouldn't use it for campaign fodder.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it. I think it's nothing against the family, and I think people need to remove the bleeding heart portion of that. My mother is an immigrant. She came here legally. She worked her butt off, and she's the only one in our family with a master's degree. So it can be done. It can be done legally. It can be done the correct way, and we welcome legal immigrants. I would argue that an assimilation is needed so we can move the country forward. So all of, I understand what they're wanting to do from the heart aspect of it, but I think the logistics behind it and the infrastructure, I think, are tone deaf to what's happening in our own community when we can't even house. Housing is outrageous. Rents are what they are in Los Angeles, in Klamath, with no business to supplement that. No economic growth to supplement that.
It's insane.
It's insane. And it's happened within, and I give this example, and my husband told me to stop doing it, but I'm not going to, is our home that we purchased at the Running Y has doubled in the past 3 years. Doubled.
I was like, you guys didn't buy that long ago.
We've had it 7 years, and it was fine, maintained, went up 1,000 or something like that. Then, in 2021, it doubled in price.
Wow.
Without us doing anything to that home. I mean, little paint here and there, but we haven't done anything to that home, and it's doubled in price.
Wow.
It's now in the high 6s. Which is insane, because then what do? Okay, because we're getting to that point, kids are getting bigger, we need more space, we'd like to get out of the HOA, which is horrible. We would like to move to the country, but then we're just buying into the same market. Mm-hmm. When does this end? When does the bubble burst? Are we going to end up in a 2008 situation? Mm-hmm. So we're just laying low and kind of riding the wave. But that's insane.
Well, and there's people that I know personally that, especially with all these insane politics going on, wanted to move away.
Right.
Which my argument to that is it's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
It's literally everywhere. You're not going to escape it.
It will be there soon.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you can't escape.
There's a lot of people talking about, let's run away to Idaho. What's in Idaho?
And they bring their politics with them.
Uh-huh.
And now Idaho is now purple.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be there.
Yeah.
Anyways. And then you have the disadvantage of now you don't know anybody.
Right.
You just ran away from everyone that you knew and all of your personal resources.
Yeah. There's something to be said for digging your heels in and standing your ground.
Yeah, there absolutely is.
And which is why Klamath County was able to go through 2020 mostly unfazed. I don't know if you've been to Multnomah County.
There's a lot of us that stood our ground.
Yes. Individuals, businesses, some government officials, luckily, our sheriff wasn't cracking down on the mask thing. I mean, so there's, you have to give that to Caber. I mean, he did.
Absolutely.
He did.
I will absolutely give credit to Caber where credit is due. Well, credit to anybody.
Right, exactly, for standing up. And so I think, if you go to Multnomah County, it's like COVID is still there. People are still afraid. I went up there. I went to an oral surgeon appointment up in Portland in November of 2020, and I cannot tell you, it was like driving into a different planet. So you come up, you go through, and then as you're driving in, it was boarded up. Everyone and their dog was masked. There was graffiti everywhere. It was because, remember, the riots were going on as well. Yeah. So it was like, I'd never seen, and this happened within a couple of months. Mm-hmm. Portland used to be a place where we would go for concerts and art exhibits.
In fact, I was at a concert in 2019 with my brother.
Yeah. It used to be fun. It was always funky. And you had some bad spots where you're like, okay, don't go there. But it was always... it always attracted these creative and fun and just wild people that it was great to visit.
That's where I wanted to go to school.
Yeah.
The Art Institute up there.
Yeah.
I ended up doing it online because I couldn't afford to move up there.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's crazy. And all the businesses that have left there.
Right,
even Nike left.
Yeah. Everything
left. And now they're up there, ruling over the ashes, basically. So, local government is more important than people think. Mm-hmm. And we cannot even begin to fix things at the state level, at the national level,
if we don't fix it.
If we don't clean out our own house
first. Guys, I told you, I've been saying it for years now.
You've got to clean your own house and get everything right in your own county before you can even think of doing anything outside of that. And you have to be very careful who you put in these positions. So right now we have an election where the purse is at stake with the commissioners and law and order with the sheriff. Mm-hmm. Guys, I'm telling you, if the 2 wrong people or 3 wrong people get into these positions, it's really going to damage Klamath County.
Absolutely.
And so it is imperative that you vote, you get your ballots in, you can encourage your friends and family to do the same and vet those candidates. Now, whether or not that's me or somebody else, no. And then once they get in that office, you hold them accountable.
Yeah.
For everything they promised.
Well, you said you were going to
Yes.
You know,
write it down and you hold it accountable.
fix the potholes.
Yes. and you guys, as
potholes are still there.
Exactly. As the shareholders in this business of Klamath County, if your employees, which you are paying for, commissioners, sheriff, things like that, are not doing their job, get rid of them. You have that power. You have that power. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I think we've pretty much covered everything that I...
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you.
It was wonderful.
I mean, this was like the first interview
day.
I've ever really done.
Yeah,
so.
it was. You did fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
I learned from Joe Rogan.
Oh, perfect. Perfect.
Actually, I've been watching a lot of Tucker Carlson lately.
Yeah, how's Tucker doing?
You know, I like Tucker more now that he's not attached to Fox News.
Oh, man. I used to be a Fox News junkie. Back in the day, I would only watch Fox News. I had it in the background all the time. And then I just started
watched NFL while you were watching Fox News.
Well, because at the time, when Fox News started, it was quite revolutionary.
Yeah.
30 years ago or whatever it was. And so it was like, that was the place. It was fair and balanced. Remember? Fair and balanced in this. And it's like, oh, finally we can. But, we quickly discovered they might sprinkle a little truth in there, but they're as corrupt as the rest of them. And even more so because I always detest those that pander to the conservative crowd.
I think that's why I'm liking Tucker more now, is because I listen to him and you get that sort of feeling that you get when you listen to Joe.
Yeah.
That he's not here to pick a side.
Right.
He's just here to get information.
Truth.
His interview with Putin, that was interesting, to say the least. That was 2 hours long, but it's worth it.
Nice.
It is really worth it.
Nice.
And I don't know what's going on with this whole Putin narrative, but
I don't know. Well,
it's weird.
If you look at it biblical in nature, what the Gog and Magog, it's Iran and Russia. I mean, we're living in biblical times. People just have to get their phone away from their face, pick up their Bible, a little bit of history, and they will see. We are on a path. Now, to what? We're going to see. If you're of a certain faith, you think one thing. If you're of a certain belief set, you think something else. Okay. But we're on a path that has been predicted thousands of years ago. So what are you going to do with your time? Are you going to live in fear? Nope. I say no.
No, but I am going to live it reading and researching.
Yes.
That's what I do.
Yeah, I love that.